Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Silent Jenkins podcast today with Jacob Magadan.
Dalton Phillips.
And obviously, a super fun week of football again. A lot of games that decided who can make the playoffs, a lot of games that knocked some teams out of the playoffs, and then obviously decided who's going to be playing in these big time conference championships coming up this Saturday. So, just really start us off here. Looking at the College Football Playoff Committee's rankings come out Tuesday at 7 o'clock on ESPN. These were it. This is the deciding factor of who could make the playoffs after this upcoming week. And it's pretty much been eliminated down to a pool of about 15, 16 teams that have any chance at all to make the playoffs. Of course, we only have 12 spots, so some of those teams are going to be upset. And then just looking right at it here, we got number one Oregon. Of course, they've been the best team all year. No blemishes on the record, and of course, they're playing a big game against Penn State in the conference championship game. And you have Texas at two. They've looked pretty dominant. Other than that Georgia loss, they've struggled through quarterback injuries and still been able to win games, sitting at 11-1, of course, and also playing in the SEC championship in their first year in the SEC. And then, of course, you see Penn State at three. Like I mentioned, big time game for them playing in that conference championship. Can possibly move themselves to the one spot if they were to win that one. Um, Number four, Notre Dame. This team has looked dominant since the NIU loss. They don't have to worry about a conference championship. They're not going to move down that much. If Georgia were to beat Texas, I could see them jumping Notre Dame, but then Texas would probably drop below them. Oregon, Penn State, that doesn't really matter. They're both ahead of them there. Notre Dame is sitting pretty to get that five seed and be that first team that doesn't have a first round bye, which will favor them a lot. I mean, that's a good spot to be in. You get to play the last team to make the playoffs, and then on top of that, you also get to play, you know, potentially get to play an easier matchup in the next round when you're playing the four seed. Now, of course, Texas loses, then they would not be getting that bye, and that would bump them back. Or let's say, Penn State doesn't fall below them, they would also get that fifth line, which is a good line to be on, in my opinion, in this because you get a home playoff game, and then you get a really easy second round compared to going to play the one, two, or three. You'd be playing like a Big 12 champion or a Mountain West champion. After that, of course, you have Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee. This was going to be an interesting ranking here. We were not sure where would Ohio State fall. This is it. I mean, you got Georgia five. They can only go up at this point. I don't think they'll drop if they lose to a top two team in the country in Texas. Ohio State, they're dead set in between those two teams. Tennessee there as well. Can't jump anybody because, of course, they don't have a game to play this week. Then you have SMU at eight. That is a massive talking point. SMU has a cushion between them and Alabama. That was going to be the question mark was when they go into conference championship week. If they were to lose a game, would that drop them all the way out of the playoffs? I don't think it should happen. In my personal opinion, that would be ridiculous to punish a team for making their conference championship game. Why would you want to make a conference championship game at that point? What would be the benefit of making it if you're going to be in the playoffs, lose that game, and then be out of the playoffs? I think that would be super stupid. I guess we'll see what happens. I know what this committee can do. It is Alabama at 11, and obviously the sales are there for them. And there's obviously a little bit of bias when it comes to them as a product. They are well, obviously somebody that brings money to college football. They do a very good job at doing that. They have one of the largest fan bases, if not the largest. And then, of course, after that, you have number nine, Indiana. Again, I think they're dead set right there. Number 10, Boise State. They win, they're in. They lose, they're out. It'd be an interesting game. Of course, their competition comes from number 20, UNLV, which we'll mention a little bit later. You look at 11, Alabama. Again, this is where they're sitting. They're ahead of a two-loss Miami team solely based off of some of the wins they have. And then, of course, they're ahead of that Ole Miss team, which was a little bit of a debate, but I guess you can mention that the Ole Miss losses were a touch worse, although both of them have some pretty horrible losses. Then you have number 12, Miami. Again, just losing those two games to unranked opponents. Actually, Syracuse now currently ranked at 22, but that loss to another unranked opponent in Georgia Tech was just so close that you could have grabbed that one. They obviously didn't get it. And then Ole Miss at 13, their season's over. 14, South Carolina, their season's over. They cannot jump over any of those teams ahead of them. 12, Miami as well, season over. It's really just that 11 spot for Alabama and SMU. It's going to decide who really gets in. Then you look at the championship in the Big 12. You have Arizona State, you have Iowa State. One of those two teams are going to be getting in the playoffs. Both very good teams have both got hot again at the end of the year. They both, started good, had a little bit of a rough patch, and then got back going and won games that mattered down the stretch. 17 Clemson, they control their own destiny. They win the championship, they're in the playoffs. They lose, they're obviously not. At 18 BYU, really sad to see them fall off the way they did towards the end of the year. Of course, two big losses down the stretch eliminates them from playoff contention. And then Missouri, again, an SEC school that's played a tough schedule, haven't had a ton of big wins, but they've been here all year, so they're still here. UNLV, again, control their own destiny. If they win, they're in. They would top Boise State and make it to that playoff spot as probably the 12th seed. Then you look down the list here, the last five teams in Illinois, Syracuse, Colorado, Army, and Memphis. All these teams have taken losses throughout the year that have just kind of hindered their chances of making a playoff run. Of course, Illinois and Syracuse. I think Illinois has been pretty good this year. Brett Bielema was actually arguing with Lane Kiffin when Kiffin made his argument for why they should make the playoffs. They have the 30th strength of record and strength of schedule, and Ole Miss has 31st. So Bielema was like, "Well, if you're not in, why am I not in?" So it was the whole case of him arguing on Twitter. Of course, it was pretty funny. Syracuse, of course, that massive win that basically gifted Clemson a chance to get in the playoff. Colorado, of course, just couldn't get it done. They lost too many games that they shouldn't have lost. And they are a lot better than they were. We'll see what happens next year. They're losing all their key contributors. Can they replace those guys? Sanders says he's going to attack the portal big time. I expect he will. Army at 24, again, really cool story for the year. Sitting at 10-1 right now. Only loss coming to that Notre Dame team, but it was a really bad one. I think they would be in the discussion for the playoff if they just hadn't got blown out the way they did. That one was just not close enough. And then Memphis at 25, they upset Tulane. They put themselves in the top 25 for the last, second to last ranking. And it'd be really cool to see this Memphis team that was expected to really compete in that conference, just couldn't get it done, but got the big win towards the end of the year against a rival in Tulane and knocks them out of playoff, which obviously feels pretty good. Dalton, again, all 25 sitting right here in front of you if you got anything you want to add.
Yeah, I'm glad to see the Volunteers in the playoffs. I would love to be a little bit higher. I wanted a home game in Neyland, but I mean, I'm fine with just being there. I'm going to enjoy it either way. I think that South Carolina team got a little bit of hate on. I mean, I was watching a video of Baylor. I understand they lost to Alabama. Alabama's always going to get a bye over anybody because I mean, we're up here in Virginia, and you see, I'll be driving around, and you'll see 5 or 6 Alabama stickers. And Alabama just has to pull so many fans, and they're just going to get the bye over everybody else. If they're able to be in the playoffs, they'll be there.
Yeah, I think obviously the chance of them getting in, that's the big talking point. What will happen between SMU and Clemson? I think again it would be absolutely ridiculous if this was 2 years in a row that Alabama got in over a team that played in a conference championship game. Last year's again FSU won, was a 13-0 football team, and without their quarterback, that's what left them out. It would be crazy just for me to see an SMU team that if they didn't get it done, they would be punished and miss the playoffs. I think that's where the flaws in this system are with what we're doing currently in the college football playoff. I think that they're going to use these 2 years that they've signed this contract for to figure out exactly what the issues are and hopefully fix them because that's a big one. You shouldn't be punished for having an extra game. That should not be a punishment. Other than that, I think again this is just another fun week of college football. We have the conference champions. This is one of the biggest weeks in the sport. It will decide who gets those first round buys, who guarantees them a spot. They don't have to worry about the committee making those decisions. And again, just interesting to see what happens. Going straight from that into our first game here. This was a big one. This was one that did change the outlook of the playoff. Memphis upsets this Tulane team that had been rolling. They had been argued to be the best non-power school. Although Boise State was ranked ahead of them, a lot of the fan base, a lot of the crowd said this Tulane team is the best non-power team. And they fall to this really good Memphis team. Again, very talented. Seth Hennigan at quarterback, of course, you can see here his stat line, 22 for 29, 218 yards, 2 touchdowns. Doesn't throw an interception. Plays really well here. But a lot of this game was on the shoulders of Mario Anderson. Unbelievable game. 24 for 177 and a touchdown. He's unstoppable. He was running like a tank in that game, man. They could not bring him down. Of course, on the other side, we look at their running back that didn't produce. Mekhi Hughes has been the guy that has kind of shouldered the load for them all year. And he doesn't get it done on the ground, only 9 for 15, really shut down by this Memphis team. And they just knew what the attack was going to be for this Tulane team. Of course, Mensah here, he goes 21 for 33, 317, 2 touchdowns, and interception. He plays well, but the issue in this game was the turnovers. As you can see, 2 fumbles and an interception for Tulane. That loses them the game. They fumbled twice inside the 20-yard line. You can't do that. That is points you're taking off the board. 2 opportunities to score 2 touchdowns that would have won you the game. It's just upsetting because this Tulane team is a fun team to watch. I do pull for them. They are, one of those teams that's just easy to root for. And of course, playoff hopes are dead now. Although they can still win their conference championship, Don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, we talked about Mekhi Hughes earlier in the year, and I mean, he was like crazy. Like, I mean, this guy's 1,000 yard rusher. I mean,
Yep.
he's done things all year, and he just got shut down. And I believe that's why Memphis won this football game because they could run the ball so much better.
Yeah, exactly. That was the whole difference in this game. You look at those rushing yards, you look at those averages, and that was just really Memphis's area. They dominated it. Next game here, Georgia Tech at Georgia. This was a phenomenal football game. 8 overtimes, almost breaks the record, which is 9 in college football. Both teams really just couldn't be stopped. This was just an overall very fun game to watch. Haynes King, he's a stud. I mean, he's playing through a really bad injury. He is not healthy, and he goes 24 carries for 110 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. He throws for 303 yards. He has 2 touchdowns through the air. He has no interceptions. He just played a perfect game while hurt. And it's fun to watch a guy that could have been a dark horse candidate for the Heisman if he hadn't got injured, and it could have been a really good Georgia Tech team with him behind the helm. On the other side for Georgia, Carson Beck plays another phenomenal football game. 28 completions, 297 yards, 5 touchdowns through the air. If you're getting that Carson Beck, again, this offense can be very, very deadly. It is hard to stop them. I mean, that's a crazy good game from him. You look at the run game for these two teams. We always expect Jamal Haynes to be a stud for Georgia Tech. 13 for 91 does his thing. And on the other side for Georgia, the young kid Nate Frazier, kind of been unexpected the kind of contribution they've had to have from him because ETN just hasn't done it this year. He's been way, way less of the version he was last year. I mean, less than half the yards. There's no production. Obviously, the injury hurts that. But they got a lot out of Frazier in this game, and he scored the game-winning 2-point conversion in the eighth overtime. Dalton, if anything you want to add.
Cash Jones for Georgia is like he's clutch. I mean, that guy on the backfield catches the ball. I mean, he caught one of the I'm pretty sure one of the touchdowns to put him into overtime. And
Yeah.
I sit and watched this game. It was about halftime. I'm like, man, this is getting close. I better go tune into this. I was doing a little bit of homework. I was like, and I sat there and watched, and I ended up watching until like 11:30, I think. And
Oh, gosh, yeah.
it was just so late. I was like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. I was like, maybe Georgia Tech can pull through here. I was hoping for them.
Yeah, it was a super fun game. I mean, this is one of the best games we've got this season. We've had classics each and every week, though. Of course, I always like to mention Eric Singleton, Malik Rutherford. Those guys played really well for Georgia Tech. But of course, on the other side for Georgia, you mentioned Cash Jones as their leading receiver in this game. Really great receiving back, one of the best in the country. Does a great job for them when they need him. He's also a really good pass blocker in the backfield. So he does a lot for them. And again, I want to make this point because it's something that I think has been brought up a lot this year. I think that this kind of proves that the conferences have become more balanced than they have ever been. I think this proves that transfer portal is doing the job that it was expected to do, that these 5 stars and 4 stars don't sit on the bench at these schools anymore. They go play somewhere else. They go make a big difference in other areas. And even though the best schools are still the best teams because they have the best NIL funds and they have, the most attractive destination for transfers, it at least balances out some of the country and allows some of these teams to compete a little bit better with top tier teams, like you saw this Georgia Tech team do. I think it was overall just a great football game. Next game here, we'll be diving into our picks that we made for the week. This was a fun one. South Carolina at Clemson. These two teams do not like each other, and South Carolina pulls off a big time win. That unfortunately doesn't matter for them. Their season's over, and obviously they love to beat their rival. That's obviously a talking point, but it just didn't. It didn't help them enough. They didn't have enough gas to get to the finish line to pass up that Bama team, pass up the Ole Miss team even. Obviously, that was 2 of their 3 losses, so that hurts them a lot. This team had potential to be so much better. Sellers' injury really affected them. He was hurt during those big time games, so just not a lot of chances for them to win those games without him. They just didn't produce. You can see what he does when he's on the field. This is a Clemson team that has a good defense. They've kind of pride themselves on that. He goes 164 through the air and 166 on the ground. 16 carries, averaging 10 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. And if you watch this one, you would say this guy's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I mean, he runs all over the place. He does whatever he wants. He made unbelievable play after unbelievable play. It really looked easy for him. He looked like he was playing football ahead of his time. He didn't look like a freshman quarterback. He looked so comfortable when he was making the plays he was. And of course, he didn't throw a ton, but again, this is just not their offense. They run the ball a lot. You can see him and Rocket Sanders both getting involved in the rushing attack. And on the other side for Clemson, Klubnik plays a pretty good game, but just doesn't have any touchdowns through the air, has the interception. But the rushing attack for him, a guy that we, again, did not mention as an elite rushing quarterback, 10 for 62 and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Very important for this Clemson team. Just didn't get it done. But again, They control their destiny. This game really truly didn't matter for them because Miami lost. The Gamecocks are done. There's no more football left to be played. Clemson, they've got all the life. I mean, they can literally make the playoffs right now. They're just winning this game coming up, of course, in a week. I think that this is just kind of a telltale sign again of how the system's just a little bit flawed. But just this game not mattering for South Carolina kind of sucks. Dropping those 3 games, of course, hurts them. You look at the receiving game, Antonio Williams is phenomenal. He has been all year. And then they just have a really good receiving core behind him. Wesco, TJ Moore, and then Drake Brenningstool. Their tight end is a monster. He's a big-time threat, big guy that can catch a pass in the end zone, of course. And then, talk about the human cheat code and Nick Harbor. He goes 3 for 51 in this game. I think he'll be part of their offense a little bit more in the future, unless he ends up somewhere else. The only issues you see from the South Carolina team is a couple turnovers. Sanders fumbles, Sellers fumbles, and has the interception. But they do get it done, of course, behind a pretty good defense. And they didn't do as much in this game as they have in other games, but just enough to get it done. A 17-14 win. Dalton, you have anything you want to add?
This South Carolina team's a good football team. Sellers is crazy. This team's gonna be scary next year. Clemson has a light for a playoff chance right here. They have a chance for it, and with Cade Klubnik find his legs, maybe they found something different there that nobody prepared for.
Yeah, and I think this Clemson team is still pretty good. This is not a bad loss. You're losing to a really, really hot South Carolina team. This South Carolina team very easily is one of the best 12 teams in the country right now. They are playing like one of the 12 best teams. But it just doesn't matter because they messed up. You can't lose 3 games and hope that you're just going to get thrown in there because you lost 3 games. But they are extremely hot, and so I can see the argument for them being in there because when you look at the eye test of who's the best in the country, I think their name is going to get thrown in there a lot. And again, Clemson still has a chance for the playoffs, and for their final goal to be achieved, it's still there. Next game here, this was it. This is the epitome of this season. It is to the purest form. What we've watched all year is that anybody can beat anybody. Michigan, who has had one of their worst seasons to follow up winning a national championship, they've had probably one of the worst seasons they've had in the last 5, 6, 7 years, and they go in there and beat Ohio State at Ohio State in the game. No passing attack. Davis Warren is not good. He goes 62 yards, 2 interceptions, and it does not matter. They do not even have some of their best players do not play in this one. They lose Colston Loveland through this game. They lose Will Johnson through this game. It is literally a Michigan team that is down to nothing, no passing attack, and they still can outwill this Ohio State team. What does this say about Ryan Day? What does this say about the Ohio State program and where it's at right now? I don't know. Will we see some firings? Very easily could. Is Ryan Day got this team going in the right direction when it comes to winning? He is very good at winning. He's like 61-10 since he took over. They are very good at winning. But he's also lost 4 straight to Michigan. That is a fireable offense. We'll see what happens with them. It will be very interesting. I don't know if it's the right move for them to do that. Again, it's hard to find a coach that can win 61 games in the span of time he's been. But it is also hard to not fire a coach who can't beat the one game you care more about than a national championship. So we'll see what happens. Again, you could not blame that all on Day. Howard does not play his best game, playing through injury, of course. Throws the 2 interceptions. It was not a pretty game for him, and they really didn't get their run game going. Don't know if there's anything on you to add.
This game was a dogfight, and even at the end, they had a lot of beef on it after that. Ohio State, they couldn't fight during the game, but they had to make sure to fight after it. Michigan surprised me here. I didn't believe this Michigan would ever compete, ever, even with a rivalry game like this game is. This game is a Super Bowl for these teams. Like, it really is. This is a national championship for Michigan. Like, they winning this, they're as happy as they were for winning a national championship.
You ask any Michigan fan how happy they are, and I promise you, this is just like winning that. Like you said, this is their national championship before the playoffs. I mean, it is. Khalil Mullings is a monster. 32 carries is insane. That is a team relying on you completely. They completely relied on him. And they got it done with him and, of course, this awesome defense that they have. They have multiple guys that are going to go to the league off this defense. Obviously, they just did a great job of containing this Ohio State team. Guard them well. That's just the way they win games. Gritty football games. Michigan gets it done, and this is a big one for Sharon Moore. Of course, his first really, really big win as a head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. Next game here, Miami on the road against Syracuse in the JMA Wireless Dome, the worst place to play in the ACC. This is a cursed location for a team to go in and be favored. You don't see many teams walk in here and get a win. I don't know why it's so difficult to go there. If it's something to do with just being in a dome because you don't play very much football in domes, but it is difficult. And this Syracuse team, to give them their props, was down 21-0. Come back to win this one 42-38. They just wanted it more. They wanted it more. When they interviewed the coach and the players on the field, you could tell the joy and the excitement that they had for winning this game and really putting this Syracuse team in the right direction. Kyle McCord, I guarantee you Ohio State wishes they had him back. This dude is the leading passer in the country. He's looked phenomenal in every game but one. I don't know what happened in that game. He just did not have a day. He had a bad day. But other than that, this is the Kyle McCord that you were expecting at Syracuse. And then, of course, Miami. It is very upsetting. It is very upsetting. The way you've ended this season is actually the worst way you could possibly end it. You take yourself out of the playoffs. You take yourself out of your conference championship game. You ruin what is probably one of the better quarterback seasons you've had in I don't know how long, 20 plus years. And Cam Ward was really, really great. I mean, 350 yards, 2 touchdowns. He didn't do anything wrong. It's just this Miami defense, which has been their issue all year. They cannot get stops. They can't do it. They cannot beat elite offenses. And this Syracuse team has one of the best offenses in the country. Behind that awesome passing attack, Dalton, if there's anything you want to add.
I called this upset again. I just didn't believe in this Miami team. They've been very lackluster on the defensive side of the ball, and they just continued. They showed it in the Georgia Tech game, and I was like hoping they would in this game, and they did because I like this Syracuse team. Kyle McCord he's just like a cool guy to watch play football because he just slings it. He doesn't care. He just slings the rock.
Yeah. He does whatever he wants.
Yeah.
That is exactly what they want him to do.
Yeah.
They want him throwing the ball. If you remember his 5 interception game, he threw the ball 50 times.
They even after he threw all them interceptions in the first half, his coach literally looked at him and said, "Just keep throwing the ball," because that's what he does. They want him to throw the ball, and he does. I mean, the guy's threw the ball 36 times in this game, as much as Cam Ward. And Cam Ward was a Heisman contender. He's still there, but I'm just saying, like, hey, it's crazy. He slings the rock, and then they win ball games with it.
Yeah, and I saw the question be asked, should we be putting Kyle McCord in Heisman talk? Because, again, he is the leading passer. The next guy is Cam Ward, who's obviously been great too, who is in the Heisman talk, of course, with his team where it's at. This Syracuse team is ranked, and they look good. Again, they look good. They run the ball well. Quinn Allen has a great game. They kind of talked to the coach after the game and asked him about LaQuinn Allen. He said, yeah, this guy's a beast. He said, we give him the ball. We know he's getting a yard. Like, he's going to get yards. He ain't going backwards. He did his job, scored 2 touchdowns, 82 on the ground, and then Miami they got their rushing attack going in this game. It was just the defense. I mean, the running game was there. They just can't rely on that defense. It's been bad all year. It hurts them again. Xavier Restrepo is awesome for Miami, 9 for 148. Of course, on the other side, Trebor Pena is awesome for Syracuse. But again, just a really fun game. We kind of saw what happened. This Miami team is pretty much done. They said whenever watching the committee ranking show that the teams behind Alabama cannot move back ahead of them because there's no games to be played. There's no more data points to be made. So that's it. Miami will be playing in a pretty big bowl game, but they're not getting a playoff. Next game here, Arizona State, the number 16th team in the country. Of course, we just looked at it. They've moved up in the rankings a little bit. Playing this Arizona team at home, and they dominated. I mean, Arizona State is very good. They are rolling right now. Sam Levitt is awesome. 291, 3 touchdowns through the air. Cam Skattebo is a monster. This dude is unbelievable. Probably one of the hardest players in college football to tackle. We talk about contact balance when we talk about Ashton Jeanty. This guy's right up there with him when it comes to contact balance. If he gets hit, he's still going. And then to mention a name, Kyson Brown, which we have not talked about this year, goes 8 for 100 in this game on the ground. They rushed for 281 yards, averaging 7 yards per carry with 3 touchdowns. They dominated this Arizona team. Arizona had zero chance in this game. And this is the kind of thing we expected out of a team that is looking to make the playoffs and maybe do some magic and have a pretty cool Cinderella run. And on the other side for Arizona, Fafita just hasn't been right all year. He doesn't do it in this game. 126 yards is not enough when you have this guy down there to throw the ball to. So it's just they don't use him enough. They don't have the passing attack that they were really hoping they would have. And on the other side, of course, Arizona State has Jordan Tyson, has been one of the best receivers this year, looks to continue the success into the championship game of the conference and maybe into the playoffs. But we'll see what happens with this Arizona team. Again, Fafita will be back. He was a guy that was supposed to be kind of a dark horse Heisman candidate. Did not do that this year, but he won't have his guy next year. So we'll see what he can do if he can get any better without the best receiver in the country. Don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, I love this Arizona State team. Cam Skattebo is crazy. Their rushing attack is excellent, and they can also pass the ball quite well too. And Arizona just can't get like the feeder just doesn't feed Tedero the ball as much as he should, or get him open like they should. Their offense, for some reason, when you have the best receiver in the country, he should be touching the ball as much as you possibly can, and you've got to be able to get that guy open, even if he's getting double teamed and stuff like that. He's just you've got to open that up a little bit. Are you
And
going to see what's going on?
you can go to that guy in a double
Yeah.
team. How good he is.
Yeah, he's a Julio Jones, like I compared to in the other video. That guy will go up and get the ball almost every time.
He is a monster of a player. Again, they just didn't use him enough. That's kind of been their downfall their season. They go 4-8. They don't even achieve a bowl game. It was picked to finish high in the conference, and really just zero success in the kind of season that they wanted to have this year. Next game here, Notre Dame on the road against USC, and of course they've backed up that they are one of the best offenses in the country. They have a freakishly good defense. Of course, they did allow some points here, and Jaden Maeva. If you want to talk about USC, he played well for them. He did have the 2 interceptions, but again, he's pressing. He's down. He has to try to come back. We'll see what they do with him at the quarterback position. It'll be interesting to watch and see if he sticks around at USC. Of course, they will be playing in a bowl game, so you kind of get to test them there as well. And then, of course, for Notre Dame, like I said, this has been one of the best teams in the country since the NIU game. They get unbelievable production from the rushing attack yet again. Jarian Price is amazing, 12 for 111. Jeremiah Love, we've talked about him a million times. This dude's a freak. And then, of course, Riley Leonard, 12 for 50 and a touchdown as well. They all run well. This is the kind of game you expected out of them. Interesting here, Tyler Buckner completes a pass in this game for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So that's a fun one. You look at the receiving corps for these two teams. We talked about Mekhi Lemon, how good he could be. And Zachariah Branch, of course, the super great returner for them. They do a lot in the passing game. It's just nowhere near enough to compete against this really good rushing attack. And then, of course, for USC, Quentin Joyner, Brian Jackson, they kind of get it going on the ground, but we don't see Woody Marks as much in this game, which was interesting, seeing that he was their lead rusher coming into this one. And the difference is purely just the Notre Dame defense being good enough to get it done when it mattered most. And, of course, you can see Jeremiah Love work some in the receiving game like he normally does. Don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, USC got things going with Lemon. When life gives you lemons, pass that guy the ball. That's what's going to happen here.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they got things going. Like, surprised me a little bit. 35 points against this Notre Dame team is no joke. Like, this team's good. This defense is very good. And you see how good Notre Dame's offense did. I mean, they're Notre Dame's offense. They're excellent, except for the NIU loss. That was we're not going to.
Yeah,
it's done and over with. Done and over with.
I don't know what happened there, to be honest.
I don't know how you can lose to NIU and then just do how they did the rest of the season. It's
Yeah.
insane to me. Like, it's a very impressive, honestly.
Yeah,
Like,
they lost
you have the
home.
lowest of lows, but then you have the highest of highs. Like, it doesn't make sense. You're
Yeah.
11-1, and you're now you're in there. You are in the playoffs. And
Yeah, guaranteed.
no one thought that after they lost to NIU. I don't know. That's just crazy to me.
We all talked about if they dropped another game,
Yeah.
they weren't going to make the playoffs, and then
They didn't. No, they excelled.
they're fourth
Yeah.
in the country. Of course, I wanted to mention this: Tyler Buckner, baby. I bet Bama probably wish they had him with that 100 QBR.
Yeah, Alabama doesn't get that much out of their running quarterback.
Next game here, Kansas State on the road against Iowa State. Iowa State, of course, playing for a chance to compete in the conference championship game and obviously have a chance to make the playoffs. They do what they need to do and get it done here. Rocco Beck, not amazing in the passing game, only 13 completions on 35 attempts, but he does throw for 137 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then, of course, you see the run game get going for them. Abu Sama, Carson Hansen, and even Beck in the rushing attack, which we've talked about. He can do that. On the other side for Kansas State, Avery Johnson plays really, really good. 220, 3 touchdowns. They run the ball pretty well with 14 carries, 72 yards by Giddens. And then, of course, Johnson, always going to be a threat on the ground. You look at the receiving game. Jace Brown, they got him going. Johnson was targeting him a lot. That's the kind of guy you go to. Gets 2 touchdowns on his 3 catches. And then, of course, on the other side, Jaden Higgins was the guy coming into this one for Iowa State. He is their lead receiver here. Again, this is just a fun game, and it mattered a lot. And Iowa State's able to pull it off. Dalton, if anything you want to talk about.
I like this Kansas State team a lot. I love Avery Johnson, dude. He's an excellent athlete. I would like to see him to get Dylan Edwards the ball a little bit more, and like out of the backfield. The guy's this little small guy, fast guy. He's going to make plays, especially in like the passing game. He didn't really catch a single ball this game, and I feel like players like that can affect the game so much. And I would just like to see that guy get the ball more.
Yeah, of course. Again, he's a change of pace back. He's the kind of guy that can have some big, huge 50-yard play because he catches a pass and goes 50 yards, or he can break off a huge run. And you're right. I think they will use him a little bit more, hopefully, next year. Of course, he will return here. And this team is slated to be really good again in the Big 12. Next game here, Auburn goes on the road and loses to Alabama. And obviously, this Auburn team just doesn't have it. They really haven't been amazing this year. Thorne does end up having a turnover again, and Jarquez Hunter threw an interception in this game, which is interesting. What was Auburn doing? I don't know. They probably don't know. That's why they're 5-7, 2-6 in the conference. On the other side for Alabama, of course, they did not play this game the way they wanted to. They did not dominate the way they wanted to, but they still got the win. That's all that really mattered because the committee doesn't look at how you win; they look at if you win, and that puts them in a situation where they can make the playoffs. It'll be interesting to see if they do get in. And again, that spot is going to be really, really close. Jalen Milroe has a good game through the air here, except for his interception, but a lot better completion percentage, 256 yards through the air. And of course, I mean, this is what he does best. Again, he is actually really good at this. 17 for 104, 3 touchdowns. And they go to Jam Miller 28 times on the ground in this one as well. Very, very good rushing attack from Alabama. That's kind of what they relied on in this game. You see on the other side for Auburn, of course, they don't get their rushing attack going as well. And it was kind of something they used against Texas A&M to get the big win they had. Just not able to get it going. You look at the receiving core. This Auburn team had two guys coming in this one that were really great, and they both have good games. DeAndre Lambert-Smith, 8 for 116. Cam Coleman, again, one of the best freshman receivers in the country. Rivaled on the other side by Ryan Williams, another freshman receiver, 3 for 53 in this game. We saw Milroe go to somebody else. Jeremy Bernard has a great game, 7 for 111. If they can use the other targets, this offense does get to be a little bit better. But here's your issue with Milroe. He fumbles 3 times in this game. He throws an interception. Luckily, he didn't lose all 3 of them. He lost 2 of them. This was sloppy, ugly football from Alabama. But it did not matter. Again, they got the win, but you just expect a lot more out of them. If they're going to be a playoff team, you can't do this against somebody like if you run into in the first round one of these teams at their home stadium and you're fumbling 3 times and giving them possessions, it's not going to work. So we'll see if they can figure that out coming into the playoffs. Of course, that's been a bit of a mistake for them. It's just Milroe does not protect the ball well at all. He's probably one of the worst when it comes to turning the ball over. Don, if you have anything to add, you go ahead.
Yeah, Alabama is it's a weird team. It's like they're almost running Wildcat all the time because your quarterback is not a quarterback. We've said it multiple times. This guy is a running back. He has another 100-yard rushing game. This guy he's dominant on the ground, and I just don't know why you can't find a guy that can pass the ball at Alabama. You have everything down there. And people want to go to Alabama for some reason. There's nothing down there I would want to visit or anything. But I would much rather you come to the orange side and play for a good football team that's actually going to be in the playoffs this year.
Well, we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. Also, we'll see if this Auburn team bounces back next year when they get a guy coming in here wearing number 2 again. If you remember the last time they had a number 2, he was kind of dominant. Next game here, Texas goes on the road to Texas A&M and proves why they are the best team in the conference. They've kind of not played the toughest schedule. They've missed out on a couple teams like the Tennessee and Alabama and Ole Miss that they haven't had to play. But they do beat this A&M team that is one of the hardest environments to go in there and win. And really, this score is closer than it was. This was domination. This was not close at all. A&M could not get anything going at all on the ground. The only touchdown they score is a pick 6. And you can look at the stats here to tell. I mean, they don't have much of a run game. Amari Daniels goes absolutely nowhere. Marcel Reed does a little bit with his feet. He does some through the air, 16 for 23, 146, but he has the interception. On the other side for Texas, he made a couple mistakes he didn't need to make, but that didn't matter when Travion Wisner was running 33 for 186. An unbelievable game from him. Kind of proved why all year we've talked about him as a dynamic player, as an athlete that can really upgrade this Texas offense. Very good game from him. And of course, you look at the receiving core for them, Matthew Golden, Gunnar Helm, not really getting the contributions from an Isaiah Bond that they had transfer in. We'll see if he's good to go for the playoffs and they can get something out of him. Of course, again, this Texas defense is unbelievable. 3 sacks, 6 TFLs. They just do everything right. And I don't want to run into this team if I'm a playoff team because that defense will get it done in big-time situations as they've proven multiple times this year. Don't have anything you want to add?
This Texas team reminds me a little bit of my Tennessee team. They have an excellent defense. Their offense is a little bit lackluster. Like, they have the weapons, but they just don't show. They have a lot more weapons than Tennessee does. Don't get me wrong on that. They're a better football team. They have the ability to be better on offense, but their defense is playing excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, their defense is dominant. Again, that's why they won this game. Again, they didn't give up any points. Their quarterback gave up 7. And I think Ewers, he's obviously not healthy. I mean, it's been said that he might not even play this game. He does play, and I don't think he plays bad. 218 and a touchdown. Of course, he has the interception, but that's not a bad football game. You just want more out of him. He was a guy that was really hyped up to be a first-round draft pick level talent. And when you have the guy sitting behind him who's just waiting to unleash his potential, it'll be interesting what they do in the playoffs. If this Ewers situation doesn't get fixed and he really is injured, I wouldn't be surprised if they think their best chances with Arch. He looked good in the 4 games he played. Now, he didn't look good in the Georgia game, but that was slotting in and not playing his scheme, his style of offense. But also, they put him in here and let him run in this game. Arch Manning goes 3 for 14 on the ground and a touchdown. You saw a little bit of that whole thing everybody's wanted to do all year, which is have the two quarterback system and actually use Arch because he's just too good to be sitting on the bench. He's too good. And that rushing ability is really deadly from a guy that a lot of people didn't know how good he was at running it until he popped in there in his first ever game. He breaks off a big 60-yard rushing touchdown. They started using him a little bit. We'll see if he gets used more going into the playoffs. Next game here, hopping into our favorites, of course. Tennessee gets it done on the road. It was looking real scary in the first quarter. They let them go out and score a touchdown quick on, obviously, a kick return. Then they score again, and they go up 14-0. And this is the Tennessee team. They were on the fence there. That was the adversity that you would like to see as a Tennessee fan. They finally had a game where the offense won them the football game. They come back. They look very, very good. 36 points. Nico plays one of his better games he's played this entire season. And Samson is as dominant as he always is on the ground. And on the other side for Vanderbilt, you can see the Diego Pavia injury. It's pretty rough. He just doesn't run like he used to do. And in the passing game, they just didn't get it going. 8 for 17 is not near enough to beat Tennessee, especially when they have the defense that they have. They're going to key in on you running it and make you beat them with your arm. And a lot of teams this year did that, and he was able to beat them with his arm. He just doesn't have it anymore. I don't know exactly what he's hurt, but it really hinders his play. 104, a touchdown interception through the air. He only rushes for 45 yards. Cedric Alexander goes 17 for 60. Had an okay game on the ground with a touchdown, but it just doesn't match anything that Tennessee can do when their backup running back and Deshaun Bishop is as good as he is, and he's better than anybody you had going. You can kind of look at the stats and figure out why this Tennessee team got a win here. Dalton, if there's anything you want to add.
I'm very excited to see that our offense actually woke up this game and actually figured out how to play a little bit of offense and didn't have to rely on the defense as much. Dylan Sampson's going to get he's going to do what he does. The guy just knows how to win ball games by himself. He can. And Nico, I'm glad he actually figured out to pass the ball a little bit. He passed the ball. I'm glad to see that he's improving because I was afraid he was just going to get to that point and just plateau out. Yeah. He's actually starting to go towards the peak a little bit. And I like to just see we're finding guys new to get the ball to. Like Deshaun Bishop, we talked about him earlier. He had a little injury, but he's coming back and he got 13 carries this game. And just excellent play. And Dante Thornton he came when it hurt though. That was all first half stats, by the way. That's crazy. Sadly, this guy he got hurt. I hope it was non-contact, which is scary. So I don't know what's going on there. I haven't seen anything on that yet. But hopefully we can figure out what's going on there because he has been our dominant receiver this year.
Yeah. He's been the guy. I mean, we've looked at stats. Every time we look at this Tennessee team, he's been the leader all year. And it's a guy that really don't get the ball enough, in my opinion. Now, a lot of that is due to himself with some drops, and some of that was Nico missing him earlier in the year. And like you said, this has finally been the game where he kind of broke out in the first half. And then you see that injury, which he's dealt with again already this year. So it's worrying because does it, on top of what he already did this year, is it double the injury? Is it something that's going to hinder him from playing in the playoffs? Because if so, that really hurts Tennessee. They have relied on him to be their big play guy. Obviously, like you said, 2 touchdowns in the first half is really great. Samson does his thing again, like I mentioned. And really, you just look at this Tennessee defense on top of all that. They have 3 sacks, 5 TFLs, and don't really let the other side doesn't do anything. I mean, this is kind of one of those games where Nico felt pretty safe in the pocket. He only made the one mistake to Martell Height. And other than that, it was a really good game from him. We'll see what this Tennessee team can do in the postseason, especially if they are without Dante Thornton. That will be very difficult.
And also Bru McCoy. Bru McCoy is out this game too, which was scary. Because Bru's that guy you're going to look to on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. He's the guy that's just going to catch the ball. He's not a fast guy. He's just going to get open, and Nico hits him. I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah, and when I was watching this one, I think one thing I noticed is I don't think Miles Kittlesman plays enough. I think Kittlesman is better than Ethan Davis. I think that Kittlesman should be the guy on the field.
I agree with you there, too. Yes, I agree with that.
I don't quite understand that. I don't think that Kittleman's a worse blocker either. When I'm watching the game, I think that he's a pretty equal blocker at the tight end position.
Yep.
I think that they maybe will use him more now because of the injuries to the receivers. Heck, you might even see that guy end up sitting somewhere in the slot or even out wide if they need him.
Yeah.
But you also don't see Squirrel on here at all. So that's 3 receivers.
Yeah.
If those 3 guys are out for the playoffs, it is going to be tough. It is going to be very tough.
That's your 3 best receivers.
That's your 3 best receivers. Yeah. And if you don't have those guys, teams can kind of put their best dude on a Chris Brazzell, who is a great player, but he's not as good as
he's just young. That's all it is. He's young. He's going to develop a little bit.
Started by a number 1 corner. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they do. We need to look into what Heupel says a lot. The first playoff game is December 20th. So we're sitting right now on what, the third, the fourth? So they've got, 16 days. So hopefully they can get healthy by then. They will be playing, of course, either on that Friday, the 20th, or the 21st, because they can't get a bye, of course. And it'll be interesting to see what they roll out there. Do they have their full team? If they do, they are obviously scary because Nico has got going. I mean, he still had 4 touchdowns in this game without half of his team for the second half. And we'll see what happens for this Tennessee team. Next game here, of course, Virginia Tech proves who dad is again. We dominate them in this series. This is our son. Virginia is our son. We dominate them. It's not close. Never has been. 23 of the last 25. They've beat us twice, and both times they had Bryce Perkins and Matt Schaub, probably the two best quarterbacks to go through this team in the last 30 years. This is what I expected. It was well worth going out there in that cold game to watch this team come out there and dominate. And the season doesn't go the way you want it to. Not even close. You want it to be at least an 8-9 win team. You don't accomplish that. But there's at least some positives to look at. First of all, of course, I think one of the key things to mention is injuries hindered them a lot this year. When you're playing without your quarterback for, half the season, he wasn't healthy since week 3. And then, of course, you miss Tootin, who is, you know it, I know it, one of the best running backs in the entire country. When he was playing, we were a far better offense, even without a healthy Kyron Drones. And this game was fun because we actually got to watch Pop Watson ball out. This was an amazing game. He wins Rookie of the Week in the ACC. They actually had him under consideration for being Player of the Week in the ACC. Really great game. 14 for 21, 254, 1 touchdown. He looks supremely confident in the pocket. This does not look like a redshirt freshman playing football. He moves up. He runs easy. He looks very fast. Not the same because he's not 5'9". He's a little bit bigger. But Kyler Murray, when he would step up in the pocket in college and take off, now I'm not saying he's Kyler Murray yet. He's a freshman. But when Kyler Murray stepped up, you saw that little boom burst of speed when he would step up and go. When he made the decision to go, when Watson made the decision to go, it was quick. It was very fast. He either made the decision or he made the throw. There was no time. You can't wait around in college football. There's no time to do that. If you do, you're going to get sacked. And this game was, you could see that pocket presence from last game, that was not the same pocket presence he had this week. He was really ready to come in here and play against this Virginia team that, of course, it's better than some of the Virginia teams we've played in the last couple of years. They had some big wins this year. Of course, beat that Pittsburgh team, which was a big-time surprise. Another thing I love to see, Bashal Tootin, man. To go out on top the way he went out on top, to break off another 60-yard touchdown like he does. He ran through a dude. There was a guy, middle linebacker, met him in the gap. Tootin ran him over, bounced it outside, 58-yard touchdown. It is just so fun to watch him play. He is one of the most fun players that I've ever got to watch as a fan. And of course, it was just fun to get to see him play one more time before he obviously goes to the NFL. You look at the other side for Virginia. Tony Muskett is not it. He just isn't. He missed a lot of throws. He had opportunities to hit guys and just couldn't do it. And the bigger story to me is Elliott said after this game, I didn't want Calandria to enter the portal. I just thought Muskett would give us a better chance in this specific game because he's a veteran quarterback. So now they're just without a quarterback next year. They don't have a quarterback. Calandria just entered the portal. He was the guy that they expected would stay. And there was one screenshot that kind of told the whole story for me as to where these two programs are at. Like, we're on the up of the rebuild. They're definitely not on the up of the rebuild. There was a picture on the sideline, and it was when Pop Watson runs out of bounds, and Calandria catches him, like keeps him from running into the bench. As Pop runs back on the field, there's a picture taken, and it's Calandria smiling ear to ear. And we were beating them by 20-some points. If that shows anything, I think that there's some dysfunctionality in that program. I think that some of the players just don't like the coaching staff. I think that Elliott should be fired. I do. I think that he should be out of there. He's not proven anything to rebuild it for them, but I hope they keep him. I hope they keep him for 10 more years. I hope he's around for the rest of time. And then, of course, you look at the receiving core. Jalen Lane, absolute bomb from Pop Watson while getting hit. 66-yard touchdown pass. That was super fun to watch. He hits Jennings big in this game. He hits Felton big in this game. It was fun just to see some deep balls connect with these guys. Pop played really good. On the other side for Virginia, they didn't get a ton of production. Again, Muskett was struggling, but he did hit some guys down the field. And of course, other big story of this game, Antoine Powell-Ryland, 3 sacks, 3 TFLs. He is a monster. Yeah. He's one of the best edge rushers in the entire country. You also look at the DBs in this game. Mansour DeLangus, another interception to add to his collection of interceptions he's had this year. Also boost his draft stock. He's a guy that I'm really hoping to get to see go either day 1 or day 2 of the NFL draft if he enters. Obviously, I'd love to have him back. But the way he's getting talked about, I don't see it happening. And then John Love, just to mention him, a kicker that will be around for a little bit while longer. He got snubbed. He was on the third team in the ACC. He certainly is the second best kicker, if not the best kicker in the ACC. Only 2 misses this year, both being blocked. Not his fault at all. And then Peter Moore. We always talk about Peter Moore. He's
The
our
GOAT.
we love Peter Moore. But yeah, just a super fun game to watch. Glad to see the boys show up for one more time. It was really cool just to see this team at least play. They didn't get what they wanted this year, but they come out here and they beat the crap out of Virginia, which it does ease the pain a little bit when it comes to, not meeting expectations. Dalton, if there's anything else you want to add.
Yeah, I got to this game a little bit early, like right at warm-ups, and I walk in. I've never been to a Tech UVA game, and
Me
I'm
neither.
literally okay. I'm walking through. Yeah, I got here before you did.
Yeah.
I was going to save our seats in the student section. I don't tell Tech I'm not a student, but I was in the student section. Ooh, okay. Well, I'm walking through the middle, right, just the gate, and UVA's walking in a line, like just for some reason they're holding arms and they're walking down the field. Tech's guys aren't moving, and I'm like, man, something's about to happen. Well, I go get my seat and I look up and there's just a big brawl happening. I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, oh no, there's going to be 25 people get. Surprisingly, nobody got in trouble at all. But like it was like a big brawl, and I've never experienced a rivalry game like that. I went to a Tennessee Alabama game, but it was when Tennessee sucked like really bad, and the tickets weren't $1,000 a piece. And I don't know. That's just something I'm not used to in football, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. That actually made me like happy to be there, and I love going to the Tech games because the energy is just different than some other places.
Mhm. Yeah, and another thing to mention, you talk about that rule. This is an interesting one. I'm glad you brought it up. At 6:30, which is 90 minutes before kickoff, that fight would have been an issue. They would have looked at it, and there was the
Yeah,
potential to kick people out of the game. If you remember Lynn Bowden that played at Kentucky, he had that happen one time in a game where he got in a fight with somebody before the game. Well, the refs don't have jurisdiction over the field until 6:30, which is 90 minute when the 90-minute countdown starts for the game.
yeah.
This happened before that, so the fight does not affect the game. Now we can get fined for it, which Tech did get fined for it, kind of like everybody else in the country with the flag plantings. But we got fined for the pregame fight. The jurisdiction, the Lynn Bowden rule, cool rule. You can't be suspended or thrown out of the game with that fight happening right before the game. And of course, you mentioned it. They were walking down the sideline that we always use in warm-ups, so it was like they just thought they owned the place, which
Yeah.
they won here ever. So yeah, I don't know what they were doing. Again, little brother activity by them. That's what. But obviously, super fun game. Glad we got to dominate them. It was also my first Virginia Tech game. The tickets are usually crazy to get. As a student, I was able to get in there. It was really, really great. It was just fun to watch them get this big time dub. Hopefully, it leads to other things. Of course, National Signing Day is today, as I said, Wednesday, December 4th. And Tech, they've had a couple of good signings here, but they also had a flip. Cincinnati commit in Jamari DeLoach, 4-star corner that a lot of Tech fans were really looking for. We didn't get him. He flips. Price said during his press conference after we finished our 19-person class, he said we talked to him at 6 a.m., and that was when he made his decision to change. So literally a last-second call. And another thing that I have to mention, because there is going to be people mad with the coaching staff. They're not going to be happy. And I don't think you can be happy, but I think with what they're doing to build the program has been good. Look at Brent Pry recruits or Brent Pry transfers. Pop Watson, Brent Pry recruit. Bashal Tootin, Brent Pry transfer. Jalen Lane, Ollie Jennings, Daquan Felton, Aiden Green, Gosnell brothers, all of them brought in as a big part of this system that he's built. And it's only been 3 years. So there's still seniors on this team that are from the last coaching staff. He's done this. And a lot of his big-time players, these are guys that he's brought in that are making differences. So I'm glad to see it. We're recruiting the footprint, as he calls it. It's basically a 6-hour radius around where we're at, and we're recruiting for Virginia again. When we were in high school, or not even high school, when we were younger, Virginia Tech come to our high school. We would have a scout come every year and talk to our head coach. That did not happen when Justin Fuente was in there. He just disconnected from the state of Virginia, which you cannot do. That's your bread and butter. That's the guys that will stay around.
I mean, we did have the number one. We had the number 3 punter in the nation at our high school, and they didn't recruit him. I understand that they had another guy from our area that's playing for the Ravens now.
Yeah.
They had him then, and it could have just been a backup, like just stuff like that. I mean, that Tech could have just pulled from our area, and the amount of athletes. I mean, it's just an air high school that we had that could have went to places like Virginia Tech and stuff like that. Go to smaller colleges because our area they don't recruit like the Southwest Virginia area as much.
And luckily, I think Price connected
Yeah.
that back. I mean, the second he takes over, the first thing he did was flip a guy that we played in high school to the
Yep.
University of Meadows, a four-star lineman that was committed to go to UVA. What
Yep.
does he do? He goes to Virginia Tech. So that connection has been reconnected. It's very important that you recruit the state of Virginia well. There is five stars that come out of Virginia.
A lot. Like it's
There's
surprising.
there's multiple at Georgia right now.
Yep.
There's guys at Penn State that go all the time. You need to start getting those again. You don't. I don't expect Virginia Tech to be a top 10 team. We're never going to be that. But you can recruit good enough to win the ACC, which gives you opportunities to play in the playoffs now, which we didn't ever have before. That opportunity is back. You can
Yep.
actually, as Virginia Tech, play in a playoff. It is a reasonable thing because you can win the ACC. You are good enough when you are playing at your top. I'm hoping they get back towards that, and I like the direction he's heading. I just think there's some staff moves that have to happen, and I think there's still more building that needs to be done. Now, again, we didn't get what we wanted to do, but don't give up on him yet. I think there's a lot ahead in the future with Brent Pry. I really like him as a head coach. Thank you guys so much for joining us again this week. We obviously have a ton of fun filming these. Another great week of football. Both of our teams get wins in their rivalry games. Of course, Dalton has a lot to look forward to in these coming weeks. The potential is there for a really fun run. And of course, it'll be kind of fun to see what happens with Tech. The portal opens up on the 9th of December. It is going to be very interesting because the teams that are not playing in the playoff, they get a jump start in the portal. They get a head start. They get to look at guys before they ever have a chance to go somewhere else. And so maybe you can dig in there, find some guys, and change this team for next year. And of course, we still have a big potential for a bowl game. I hope I'm looking at maybe it depends on what the ACC gets in the playoff. I think there's a couple options. The Fenway Bowl is potential. The Gasparilla Bowl is potential. If we were to play in the Gasparilla, that would be against an SEC school, which would be pretty fun. If you got like a Florida down there or something, it would be a fun game. But it would be interesting to see who plays that game because I think Pop Watson will get the snap again, and it would be interesting to see what he does. It'd be even just a lot of fun that can happen in bowl season, of course, for the future of teams. And then, of course, again, we've talked about it. We want to do a little bit of college basketball coverage. We will film another video soon for this week that's just happened. Dalton, if you have anything else you want to add?
Hey, Tennessee basketball's looking real good right now. Number
They
3
are.
in the nation.
And again, Dalton, if there's anything else you want to add about the Vol football team?
Yeah, we're gonna say that I'm glad this is my favorite year of football I've had so far. This podcast contributed a lot to it. Regular season went excellent for Tennessee. We had a few losses we didn't want to, but we ended up in that end goal where we want to be at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a playoff shot.
Yep.
The potential's there. That's obviously what you want.
Yep.
And again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Big time conference championship games coming up that will decide the last playoff spot. In my personal opinion, I think that's going to be really close. And again, thank you guys so much for joining us, and peace.
Peace.